Welcome to Serene Slumber Tales. Tonight, I invite you to drift away into a gentle journey of calm and wonder. In this story, you'll be carried to the quiet shores of Moonlit Haven, where a timeless inn keeps watch beside the sea. With every whisper and wave, let your thoughts soften, your breath deepen, and your body grow heavy with rest. All you need to do is listen, relax, and let sleep find you naturally. There is a door that appears only when you are ready to rest. It has a latch that never clicks, hinges that never creak, and a welcome so warm you can almost feel it brushing like velvet across your thoughts. In the evening our story begins. You are walking along a quiet shore path with the sea to your left and a hill of lavender to your right. The sky is an endless silk of deep blue with a river of stars threading its way from one horizon to the other. You don't know you're looking for anything, and yet the path bends, and there, set back slightly from the sand, waits for a low wooden building with a sign that swings without a sound. The Tidekeeping Inn, the sign reads, carved by some careful hand that loved gentle curves and patient lines. A small lantern glows on a hook above the door, its light the colour of honey. The boards of the porch have been worn smooth by friendly footsteps. You pause and breathe in the scent of salt and cedar, and the distant, sleepy hush of the tide kissing the shore. Inside, there will be warmth and a quiet story that unfolds itself. Inside, there will be tea cooling to the perfect sip. Inside, there will be the hush that happens when a place and a person understand one another. You reach for the latch, and the door opens quietly, as promised. The first thing you meet is a wash of warmth from a hearth that doesn't roar or crackle so much as whisper. The logs glow but take their time. Above the mantel, a framed map spreads across the wall, a constellation chart of the local sky, dotted with careful stars, each labelled in tiny, tidy letters. Someone has drawn little lines between them, but only where the lines felt right, leaving space where the sky itself wanted it. You step in, and a cat the colour of cream with a dusting of grey on its ears stands up from a braided rug. It stretches long, paws forward, tail high, and then pads over to you with the sort of dignified welcome one gives to cherished friends. The collar around its neck is a ribbon of deep midnight blue with a small brass tag shaped like a crescent. Moonbeam, the tag says. The cat bumps its head against your calf as if to say, yes, you have arrived exactly on time. Welcome, says a voice that sounds like soft wool and steam. From behind the counter, a person appears, perhaps in their 60s, perhaps ageless, wearing a cardigan the shade of tide-washed stones. Their smile is the kind that knows exactly how long a day can be and exactly how good a quiet evening will feel. I'm older, they say, as if you've known each other since the beginning of Cozy Places. We've been keeping a room ready for you. The kettle is listening on the hob, and Moonbeam has memorized your footsteps. You glide toward the counter. A bowl of polished shells sits there, each one paired with a small, handwritten card, the names looping in tidy ink. Whirl shell, fair tide scallop, listening conch. Alder slides the bowl toward you. Choose one, they say. Your shell chooses your room. The rooms change themselves at night, just a little, to be what you need. The shells help them remember how. You look at the shells as one might look at a collection of small promises. Your fingers hover above the whirl shell, its center curling like a secret, and then settle on the listening conch. It is warm, though shells usually aren't, and as you lift it, you hear the faintest ocean sigh. It feels like someone's quiet reassurance turned into a sound. Rest is on the way. Excellent, Alder says, as if some puzzle has solved itself. Moonfell room then. It faces the cove. The tide speaks clearly there, especially at night. Do you prefer a tea of chamomile and pear or lavender and oat? Both are good listeners. You choose by instinct, the lavender and oat, and it is poured into a cup that rests perfectly in your hands, as though the cup learned the shape of you. Moonbeam leads the way through the common room. The floorboards are seasoned to silence. Each footstep settles the day a little more. The hearth hums gently. Somewhere a clock ticks as if someone were rocking in a chair with their eyes half closed. As you pass, you notice other small details. A shelf where guests have left notes, folded slips tucked into the pages of books, a jar of smooth beach glass labelled "Found Light," a wooden bowl of river stones, each one polished by time. There is a feeling that the inn remembers everyone who visits and keeps their piece tucked away for safekeeping, to be returned if ever needed. At the end of the hall is Moonfell Room. The door is painted a soft grey blue like the inside of a shell. Alder fits a key into the lock. It turns with a contented click and the room sighs open. Moonfell Room is both simple and entirely enough. The bed wears a duvet like a snowdrift. The linens are cloud weight. A window seat faces the cove and the window is already open just a finger's width, letting in a ribbon of ocean air. Beside the bed is a small table upon which sits a glass lantern. Its light is not bright. It's the kind of light that makes you whisper for no reason other than its kindness. Alder sets your tea on the table and places your listening conch on a shelf above the headboard. It will keep the tide comfortable, they say lightly. Tonight is a good night to listen to what the sea remembers. Moonbeam leaps onto the window seat and folds herself into a crescent, as if demonstrating how to be at ease. You take a slow sip of tea. It tastes like warmth poured over quiet thoughts, like the exhale after you've unknotted a long day. The lavender is gentle and round. The oat smooths the edges until everything is kindly and certain. You can feel your shoulders letting go of something they had been holding without telling you. Outside, the tide does what tides have always done. Come and go, smooth and patient, unhurried by clocks. Alder lingers only long enough to adjust the lantern wick and smooth an invisible wrinkle in the duvet. There's a tidekeeping tonight, they say, nodding toward the window. If you feel like wandering down to the cove, not necessary, of course. Sleep is a tidekeeping of its own, but you might like the sound of it. They smile, press a small bell into your hand, if you need anything, and leave you to the room that already feels as if it has learned your name. You set the bell down and sit on the window seat. The cove is a silver bowl of water, cradling the sky's reflection. The moon looks close enough to touch, as if it had floated down to rest on the horizon. There are people at the tide line, just a few, carrying lanterns that bob with the rhythm of their steps. The lanterns look like little moons, each trying on the night to see how it feels. You finish your tea, set the cup down, and feel your body buoyed by a gentle invitation to wander. Moonbeam lifts her head, blinks slowly, and hops down from the window seat to lead the way. The room seems to tuck itself in behind you as you leave. The hall's quiet embraces you, and then the porch receives your footsteps, and then the sand, cool and patient, takes your weight without complaint. There is a tradition here at Moonlit Haven that when the tide is most balanced, neither too full nor too low, the villagers gather to keep it company. They say tides listen better when spoken to softly and fall asleep more easily when someone reads aloud nearby. Tonight, the tide rests like a mirror, unbroken. The only sound is the soft drawing and releasing, as if the ocean were a sleeper beneath a quilt of silver. You join the small circle where Alder stands with a book bound in sea-green linen. Lanterns are set along the shore, each in a glass globe with a handle of rope, their flickers curving across the water like constellations that decided to visit. Moonbeam twines through the group, then sits squarely at your feet as if to claim you for the world of comfort. "Welcome," Alder murmurs as the group inclines their heads. Their voice is low, the night hums around it. "We keep this tide as we keep a friend's hand. We speak gently. We read the old stories. We remember the names of the winds, and we thank the moon for tugging at our worries and hauling them a little farther from the shore." A small basket circulates. Inside are thin paper envelopes sealed with wax. On each is written a single word: calm, ease, home, kindness. You draw one. The wax breaks with the hush of a secret being released. Inside is a strip of parchment with a single line of verse written in the same tidy hand that labelled the shells. The line says, "Rest is the harbour that knows your sails." The words settle into you as if they recognise the shape of your thoughts. You roll the parchment gently between your fingers, feeling how soft paper becomes when handled with care. The lantern light gathers the circle into a cosy quiet, and Alder opens their book to a story that has been read many times and is always new, because the night is always new and sleep is always a journey one takes for the first time each evening. As Alder reads, the cove listens. The tale is about a lighthouse whose light did not warn ships away, but drew them toward a safe harbour hidden behind a shoulder of cliffs. The keeper of the light slept in daytime and walked the rocks at night like a caretaker of shadows. The words roll, unhurried but steady, smoothing the beach the way the tide smooths sand. You feel your breathing slow to match the oceans, the in, the out, the in, the out, as if you had placed your heart in the hands of the shore and asked it to rock you like a small boat. Somewhere along the tale, your shoulders drop another fraction. Somewhere, your jaw unknots. Somewhere, you realize how long it's been since you felt the world move at a speed that loves you. And then the reading slows, and then the book closes with a page's whisper, and Alder bends to place it gently in the basket. "Thank you for keeping the tide," they say. "It's an honor to rest together." There is no applause, only grateful sighs, the small sounds that mean we are here, we are safe, we are willing to sleep. You turn toward the inn, and Moonbeam escorts you, tail swaying like a metronome set to the rhythm of ease. Back in Moonfell room, the lantern hums a steady, soft note. On the bed lies a quilt you didn't notice before, folded at the foot like a promise still waiting to be opened. It is a quilt of weathered names. Each patch is sewn from cloth that holds a story. The sleeve of a loved shirt, the corner of a picnic blanket, the hem of a curtain that once framed a view of morning light. There are embroidered words in neat cursive around the edges. Harbour, gentle, listening, return. You draw the quilt up and it falls over you with the weight of a well-told story. Outside, the tide keeps its watch. The window brings in the quiet, salt-cool air and the softest hush. You lie back and gaze up at the ceiling, which has been painted with a faint wash of stars so subtle that they only reveal themselves when you are no longer trying to find them. On the shelf, your listening conch gathers the room's sighs and slows them until they become a lullaby of nearly nothing. Moonbeam, after a short inspection of the room to make sure all is exactly as it should be, takes her place at the foot of the bed, close enough to keep company, far enough to grant privacy to your dreams. You close your eyes, and the room, which has been watching kindly, draws its curtains across the day. You drift, and then, like a cloud that notices a mountain and decides not to climb but to braid itself through the trees instead, your mind slips between thought and rest. Images begin to float, the lanterns like little moons, the row of shells like quiet bells, the ribbon of stars above the bay. The quilt remembers the names of other sleepers and becomes warmer with each breath, as if it were collecting your softness and returning it. Sleep is a tide in this place. It comes in like water, silent, inevitable, bringing with it smooth stones and shells that once were sharp. Your body is a shoreline that trusts the ocean's hands. Somewhere inside the calm of sleep, you dream. Not the busy kaleidoscope dreams of daytime worries turned into puzzles, but the long, slow dream of a path lit by glow moss. You find yourself rising, barefoot, to follow Moonbeam along a hallway that didn't exist by day. The floorboards are cool and perfectly even. The light is sea green, soft as seaweed turned to silk. The air smells faintly of paper and rain. You arrive at a door with carvings of waves and feathers interwoven. It opens on a room whose ceiling is tall enough for quiet to stand up and stretch. Shelves are lined not only with books, but with objects labelled like memories. a jar of lightning bugs asleep for the season, a coil of ship's rope that hums when you touch it, a compass that points to wherever your heart is most at ease. This is the night library of the Tidekeeping Inn, where stories come to rest when the world doesn't need them to be busy. At a table near the window sits a person with silver hair braided down their back and eyes the colour of sea glass. They look up and smile. "I wondered when you'd find us," they say. "I'm Wren. I keep the indexes. Everything here files itself where it wants to be, but sometimes it forgets why." I remind it gently. Moonbeam hops onto the table and curls around a shallow wooden bowl filled with polished pebbles. Wren reaches into the bowl and draws out a stone that has a vein of white running through grey, like a coastline traced by moonlight. They place it in your palm. "A waystone," they explain softly. "Each sleeper who visits the night library chooses one. It remembers your path so you can return whenever you like. No pressure to visit again. Sleep has many doors. This is simply one that tends to stay unlocked." You hold the waystone and feel beneath your skin the soft hum of something older than time and kinder than most hours. Wren gestures to a shelf. "You might like these, the atlases of ordinary magic." You read titles that make quiet promises. Maps for finding your breath in an old house. Routes to the coziest corners of rainy days. Chart of all the friendly shadows. One atlas draws your hand the way a tide draws the curve of a beach. It is bound in linen the colour of dusk, and on its cover in a careful hand, the places your rest will recognise. You open it to a page that feels like it has been waiting. The map there is of Moonlit Haven and its cove, but not as a cartographer would draw it for hurried sailors. This is a tale map. It labels the bench that always warms faster in morning sun. It names the stretch of beach where smooth stones congregate after storms. It marks the window where sleepiest light falls, the path where you can count 12 breath-slowing steps between lavender patches. As you trace a line with your fingertip, the map's ink glimmers faintly, the way a memory will when you look at it kindly. Wren, who has been letting silence do its good work, speaks again. "The tide keeps the time here, but it does so slowly. You won't be rushed out of this night. Take what you need." You spend a while, which could be 10 minutes or an hour or a dream's good measure, turning pages, finding small annotations tucked into margins, little notes left by sleepers like you. "Count to 7 while the kettle speaks," one suggests. "Rest your hand on the window latch. It holds cool night easily," says another. "If you listen by the cove, you might hear the moon teaching the tide how to breathe." The notes make you smile because each is an ordinary spell, and you now remember that ordinary spells are the easiest and most generous kind. When you close the atlas, you find Wren has fallen asleep at the table with their cheek resting on their forearm, a pencil still in hand. Moonbeam, ever the scholar of comfort, has not moved except to open one eye, then close it again with a soft, contented sigh. You place the atlas back where it wants to be, slide the waystone into the pocket of your robe, and let the library breathe. You leave as you came, the door opening on your welcome and closing on your gratitude. In the hallway, glow moss dims itself to the colour of soft slate, which is the night library's way of saying, "Rest well, friend. You can always find us again." In bed once more, sleep returns like a cat who has circled the room and chosen the quiet centre. The pillow remembers the shape of your head as if it's been waiting to exhale into that exact curve. The duvet settles. The quilt of weathered names holds close and dear. Outside, the night changes its voice, but only slightly. A wind from the north comes to visit. It has brought with it the scent of pine and just a thread of snow from a far-off mountaintop, more story than weather. It touches the window frame, listens for a response, then moves on with the politeness of a guest who knows when to whisper. The tide, pleased by the earlier company, sinks into itself a little deeper. If water can hum, it hums now. You notice your breathing. Perhaps you count 1, 2, 3, 4 in and 4, 3, 2, 1 out. Maybe you imagine the numbers as stones placed along a garden path, each a small step that knows how to meet the foot and support it without complaint. Between breaths, spaces open where you can set down anything that wanted carrying. The spaces welcome this work. They were made for it. Moonbeam shifts by your shins and resumes her important task of being perfectly at ease. In the near distance, a buoy bell rings now and then, a gentle note like a spoon tapping a porcelain cup. A gull calls once, realizes the night is not interested in echoes, and tucks its head under its wing. You do not know when the next dream begins. Perhaps it doesn't. Perhaps what you experience is simply rest becoming more itself, more fully yours, more perfectly ordinary and therefore more wonderful. You float a little. You sink a little. You turn just enough to find the cool side of the pillow. You are neither here nor elsewhere, but always held by a mattress that knows exactly how many clouds are needed to be sturdy and soft at once. This is the long center of the night where hours spread out like a shawl. The shawl has been knit of time, the way grandmothers knit of wool. Each loop is intention. Each row is care. It drapes easily. It catches the draft and turns it into comfort. It knows how to be around shoulders that have done enough. Down at the beach, the tide continues its work, smoothing the script the shore writes daily. In Moonfell room near the window, a notebook lies on a small desk next to a stubby pencil that has learned to do more with less. On the notebook's first page, Alder has written this invitation. When morning comes, tell it how you slept, so it may tell the day how to begin. The letters are small and hopeful. They want you to write something simple. I slept perhaps, or I learned the shape of the tide in my breathing, or the moon keeps good company. But morning is not here yet. Night is taking its time. Somewhere, the night library nestles itself deeper into the bones of the inn, making sure each book is warm enough, each story folded at the softest angle. Somewhere, Wren wakes briefly to lay a small shawl over a sleeping atlas and then returns to their own dream like a bookmark returning to its page. You dream of writing messages in sand with a finger that leaves glowing lines before the tide comes to blur them into memory. Each message is a sentence of kindness, some addressed to yourself, some to the past, some to a future that is already learning to be gentler with you. The tide does not erase them so much as agree to carry them, distributing them into the murmuring of the water where, it turns out, kindness is a language the ocean speaks fluently. If anyone were walking the shore just now, and a fox might be, and perhaps the smallest of crabs, they would see no person and yet feel that the beach has grown somehow more companionable. The lantern on the porch of the Tidekeeping inn burns lower, not out of fatigue, but because it understands that night requires less light than we think. Back in the room, you shift again under the quilt, and the embroidered word listening coincides with the place your palm finds. Your fingers rest there. The word warms. When morning begins, it does so like driftwood washing ashore, quietly, with a light knock as if to ask, is this a good time? The sky lifts slowly out of its indigo and into pearl. The air is now neither night nor day, but something like the hush just before a library opens. A gull skims the cove and doesn't call. The buoy bell keeps its counsel. Your eyes open on the ceiling's faint stars, and you find that they've faded to a barely there suggestion, content to be forgotten until the next bedtime. The window admits the gentlest stripe of dawn. Moonbeam has relocated to the window seat, stretched long and elegant, a creature made entirely of ease. You roll onto your side and notice a small tray has appeared on the bedside table. A pot of oat lavender porridge still steaming slightly, a jar of honey with a wooden dipper, slices of pear fanned like one of the atlas pages, and a folded note with your name. The note reads, "Good morning. The tide says, thank you for last night." The kettle is also awake. Zrania A. You sit up under the quilt and let your feet find the cool, smooth floor. The porridge tastes like the continuation of a lullaby. When you dip the pear into honey, the sweetness is mindful. A small bell rung softly. You take your time. It's the kind of morning that does not tug at your sleeve. Later, wrapped in a robe that must have been woven from cloud ambitions and cotton reality, you take the notebook to the window seat. The pencil warms to your fingers, and words arrive not as a list of tasks, but as a gentle roll of observations. The night had the texture of tide-smoothed stones. I rested in the shape of my breath. The moon and I agreed to keep each other company again sometime. You close the notebook without fuss. The notebook seems to approve. When you step into the hall, Alder is there, appearing the way hosts appear when they practice the art of being available without intruding. Good morning, they say, the words as easy as a hand resting lightly on a railing. Moonbeam tells me you slept the way a shoreline sleeps, steadily, with the night on your side. You laugh softly because you didn't know cats filed sleep reports. The tidekeeping was, you begin, and then you pause, because there is no single word that says everything. Alder nods because they understand that sometimes a sentence wants to be simply a breath. We have a small tradition, they say. If your shell wishes, you may exchange it for another before you go. We call it a trade of tidings. The shell you choose will carry your gratitude out to sea and bring back someone else's, a kind of gentle circulation that keeps the cove honest. They lift the wooden bowl you saw last night and set it on a table by the window. Your listening conch glows faintly in your palm. How is it in your palm? You do not remember picking it up, then rests in the bowl with a sound like a sigh of satisfied sand. You hover, then choose the whirl shell you almost took yesterday. When you press it to your ear, a sound spirals within, a turning page, a kettle's fond murmur, a cat's contented exhale. You feel a message within it that isn't words exactly, but would be if it needed to be. Thank you for resting where I rested once. May your day find you the way the shore finds the tide. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Alder smiles. That one comes from a librarian who sleeps in chapters, they say, eyes twinkling. I suspect you met them in another language last night. You tuck the shell into your pocket beside the waystone. Two small companions, not heavy, both quietly persuasive. In the common room, a handful of guests sit with mugs, each facing a window as if they were watching a very slow, very kind play. The inn's clock ticks at a reasonable pace. On the mantel, the Constellation Map glows with morning light. A card on the counter reads, "Borrowed things. Please return at the end of your visit." Beneath it is a selection of objects, a magnifying glass, a folded scarf, a small compass, a pencil lengthened with a holder so it can do more work yet, a tiny tin of balm that smells like lemon and calm. You pick up the compass. Its needle does not point north. It points toward the most comfortable turn. When you rotate, it settles toward the cove. When you tilt your head toward the porch, it quivers with approval. When you glance at the night library's hallway, which in daylight appears to be merely a wall, the needle warms to your curiosity, then lets it go, as if to say, any time. Alder pours you a cup of tea you did not ask for, but wanted all the same. Chamomile and pear, they announce, for crossing the threshold back into the day. The world is gentle if given a chance. You step out onto the porch. The morning has arranged itself kindly. Children's footprints in the damp sand, a boat already back from whatever small errand called it, a strand of seaweed placed like a ribbon at the tide line. The lantern over the door has gone quiet, asleep the way lights sleep by letting other lights do the work. You sip, and for a moment you think you could live here, not as visitor but as a person who knows when the buoy bell prefers to ring, and how Alder likes the tea tin placed on the shelf and which steps in the stair are likely to remain silent in rain. But the world is out there, and it is patient too, and it has a place for you. The day will not hurry you away, but nor will it wait unnecessarily. It has learned from the tide. When you return to your room to gather your things, you discover that you have fewer things than you arrived with. The luggage seems lighter. This is not because anything was misplaced. Nothing is missing that you will need. What's absent are the small, heavy stones of expectation you didn't notice you were carrying. The quilt is folded again at the bed's foot, ready to be unfolded by someone else who needs its weathered names. The lantern on the table has been trimmed to a wick as small as a mouse's whisker. The listening conch is no longer on the shelf. Its work is elsewhere today. Moonbeam sits on the windowsill, tail tucked neatly alongside her. She blinks at you in a language that needs few words. You scratch under her chin, and her purr is the firm handshake of gratitude done right. If there is a contract between sleepers and inns, it is this exchange of ease. Down the hall, you sign the guest book. The pages are thick. The pen glides. You do not write your full name. You write only as much as is needed for recognition if the inn ever wishes to send you a kindness through a dream. Traveller in need of an unhurried night. Then, beneath it, a line Wren might appreciate, filed under rest. Common and extraordinary. Alder slides a small packet across the counter, a sachet of oat and lavender, a card printed with the line from last night's envelope, rest is the harbour that knows your sails, and a sprig of something fragrant that you cannot quite name but know you will remember when you open your bag at home. For when you need a small tide to rise in your teacup, Alder says, you thank them. It is a simple exchange, this gratitude, but like all simple exchanges done properly, it fills more space than its size would suggest. Outside, the path to the shore knows your feet now. It offers slightly firmer sand exactly where it will be most comfortable to step. The sea is that specific blue that only mornings can manage, that not quite committed to day blue. The horizon takes a breath it will hold all afternoon. The gulls decide as a group to be quiet again, perhaps in honour of your departure, perhaps because they too have learned something from last night about the usefulness of hush. You walk along the tide line. The water comes and goes, pretending to ignore you while keeping you precisely in its kind attention. You reach a place where the shells gather. They are piled not as if by hands, but as if by a thought, and the thought goes like this. Here is where finding will be easiest for someone who needs to find something without knowing what it is. You do not need to find anything. Nonetheless, you look. It is good to witness the generosity of the beach. A piece of driftwood, shaped like a question mark, rests beside a small, round, speckled stone. You pick them up, consider them, then place them together so they make a sentence. Why? Because. A wave sneaks up, reads your message quickly, and takes the punctuation back into its library. You stand a while longer, then turn toward the path that leads past the lavender hill. The blooms are bees' business now. They hum sky-coloured songs. The air is warmer, and if there is a metaphor in the way morning slowly becomes day, you let it remain subtle. Not every observation asks to be turned into a lesson. Some prefer to be simply seen and then allowed to rest. When you look back, the Tidekeeping inn is smaller, yet more vivid. Perhaps that is how memory works for the things that matter. The sign barely swings now, for the air is still. The lantern is drowsing. Alder stands on the porch with one hand raised, not in a wave exactly, but in a promise. This place will still be here when you need it. Moonbeam rubs against the doorframe, and you wonder if the wood is smoother there because of her affection. You could go back and ask one more question. How does the night library choose its visitors? Who decided the order of the shells? What is the difference between the tide of sleeping and the tide of waking? But the answers would be stories, and stories want time. And you have already learned that the best stories wait for you to arrive, not the other way around. So you tuck your questions next to the waystone and the whirl shell. Your pockets are not heavy. Your steps are not hurried. The hill's path leads up into the fragrance of lavender and sun-warmed dust. A small wooden gate squeaks the tiniest agreement with the day. Beyond it, the world is wide and ready, but no part of it seems to require you to be anything other than a person who slept well and remembers how to breathe. As you walk, you test the day. You take 3 breaths, slow and full, and the world does not immediately ask you to speed up. You pause to watch the way light stones look thinner underwater than they do on the shore. You listen and discover that the hum of bees pairs well with the rhythm of your steps. Each small test confirms the same hypothesis. Rest changes the flavor of time. At the crest of the hill, you look down one last time at the cove. A line forms itself in your thoughts as if written gently by a pencil on good paper. Wherever you go, a tide can follow if you remember to invite it. It is not a command. It is not a reminder with edges. It is simply an option the day offers. You put a hand in your pocket. Your fingers find the whirl shell. You lift it to your ear. The sound inside is no longer the kettle or the purr or the turning page, though those notes still shimmer in the background. Now you hear your own footsteps made softer by the sand, your own breath made rounder by the night, your own name spoken, lovingly, humbly, by a voice you know to be your own on a day when you were kind to yourself. You put the shell back. You take one more look toward the tide, and then you begin the long, gentle return to wherever you came from, which will be better for having been left and will welcome you for having rested. By the time you reach the edge of town, the day is properly awake. A baker sets out a chalkboard sign announcing honey rolls and berry tarts. A ferry horn hums from the distant pier. The lavender field thrums like a well-tuned instrument. You walk through it all, not as a person skimming the surface, but as one who slips hand in hand with the hour. When you go to sleep again, tonight or any night, you'll know the path, even if the Tidekeeping inn does not appear exactly as it did. Sometimes the door will be at the end of a garden. Sometimes it will be in a memory of rain. Sometimes it will be in the quiet between two chapters of a book you'll read for the rest of your life. When you find it, the latch will never click. The hinges will never creak, and Moonbeam will likely be there, stretching impossibly long and ordinary and perfect. There will be a lantern, there will be shells, there will be the deep, steady breathing of the tide, your tide, and the long shore quilt of the night. You will be a traveller, and also someone who has arrived. You will step through the door, and you will rest as if the world had been designed for this very purpose. And perhaps it was. And so the Tidekeeping inn of Moonlit Haven rests once more beneath the silver glow of the moon. The lanterns fade, the waves continue their eternal song, and all is safe, all is calm. May the peace of this place linger with you, guiding you into the gentlest of dreams. Thank you for spending this night with us here at Serene Slumber Tales. Until we meet again, sleep well, rest deeply, and good night.